if the integrity, corporate existence of this country is threatened, and I'm afraid the time has come.
Imagine a nation on the edge of collapse, fear and mistrust tearing it apart. It's 1967 and Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, is spiraling into chaos. Ethnic tensions have ignited, political betrayals deepen divides, and violent massacres leave trails of destruction.
As one who has been entrusted with the onerous responsibilities of guiding our young republic through these difficult times, I must confess that it is always a source of deep pleasure and encouragement to me to receive assurances of the support of the people.
In the midst of this turmoil, one man makes a decision that will change the course of history. Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu declares the independence of the Republic of Biafra. What follows is not just a war, it's a story of hope, betrayal, survival, and devastating loss. Over 3 million lives were lost, families shattered, and a nation left scarred forever. But what led to this catastrophe? What drove ordinary people to fight against impossible odds? And the haunting question, what if Biafra had won? This is the Biafra War, a nation torn apart. This is history as you've never heard it before. A nation divided, Nigeria on the eve of war. To understand how Nigeria reached this breaking point, we must first look back. Before the storm of war broke, Nigeria stood as a nation of immense potential but deep divisions. The country was structured as a federation of 4 major regions, each defined by its unique demographics, economies, and political landscapes. Nigeria was divided into 4 regions. The north, Hausa Fulani, politically dominant. The west, Yoruba, thriving in commerce. The east, Igbo, economically strong, and the smaller Midwest region. These differences fueled tensions that exploded into conflict. These regions, shaped by their colonial past, reflected the diversity of the nation but also exposed the fault lines that would soon fracture it, a spark of conflict. Then came 1966, the year that tipped Nigeria over the edge. On January 15, a group of young military officers led by Major Chukwuma Kaduna staged the country's first military coup. Framed as a mission to end corruption and mismanagement, the coup shattered Nigeria's fragile political structure. However, the killings of prominent northern and western leaders gave the coup a stark ethnic undertone. The casualties included Prime Minister Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa Ahmadu Bello, Premier of the northern region, and Samuel Akin, Premier of the western region. In its aftermath, Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, an Igbo officer, assumed power. While his rise brought temporary order, it also deepened suspicion and resentment in the north, where the coup was seen as a calculated move by the eastern region to dominate the nation. Ethnic tensions, already simmering, now threatened to boil over. 6 months later, on July 29, 1966, a counter-coup erupted, orchestrated by northern officers. The coup overthrew and killed Aguiyi Ironsi, installing Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowan, a northern officer, as the new head of state. Gowan's leadership, however, could not quell the violence that followed. In the north, a wave of pogroms targeting Igbo civilians swept through cities and towns. Over 30,000 Igbo men, women, and children were massacred, and countless others were displaced. Survivors fled to the eastern region, their harrowing stories of terror and displacement igniting a new resolve among the Igbo people. In the east, Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu demanded decisive action to protect his people. Negotiations with Gowan's federal government repeatedly broke down, with both sides entrenched in distrust and anger. The path forward became clear. On May 30, 1967, Ojukwu declared the independence of the Republic of Biafra, setting the stage for a war that would alter the fate of millions. The Declaration of Biafra, a bold step into uncertainty. The Declaration of Biafra's independence on May 30, 1967, was a moment charged with hope and apprehension. For the Igbo people and others in the eastern region, it was more than a political move. It was a chance to escape oppression and create a nation where their identity and culture could flourish. But for Nigeria's federal government, led by Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowan, it was an act of rebellion, a threat to the unity of the nation that could not be ignored. Ojukwu's decision was not made lightly. The memory of the 1966 pogroms, where thousands of Igbo civilians were brutally murdered in the north, weighed heavily on his mind. The eastern region had become a haven for survivors, but the scars of violence ran deep. Negotiations with the federal government had broken down repeatedly, with no resolution in sight. To Ojukwu, secession was the only way to ensure the safety and survival of his people. Yet independence came at a steep price. Biafra was immediately isolated diplomatically, with most nations refusing to recognize its sovereignty. The young republic faced limited resources, internal divisions, and the looming threat of military retaliation from Nigeria. The declaration was not just a bold step, it was a leap into uncertainty, marking the beginning of a bitter and bloody conflict that would engulf the nation for nearly 3 years. The war begins, a nation engulfed in conflict. When war broke out in July 1967, it did not take long for the Nigerian government to unleash a devastating strategy, an economic blockade of Biafra. This tactic was designed to choke the fledgling republic, cutting off food, medicine, and essential supplies, and it succeeded in creating one of the most harrowing humanitarian crises of the 20th century. Malnutrition swept through Biafra like a silent plague, and its youngest citizens bore the brunt of the suffering. Images of starving children, their bellies swollen from kwashiorkor and other severe forms of malnutrition, became heartbreaking symbols of the war. Families scavenged for food, surviving on roots, leaves, and whatever scraps they could find. Communities descended into despair as parents helplessly watched their children wither away. The blockade was calculated to weaken Biafra's resolve, but it exacted its greatest toll on the innocent civilians who had no hand in the conflict but paid the ultimate price. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Biafra's leadership sought unconventional methods to resist. They enlisted the help of foreign mercenaries like Carl Gustaf von Rosen, a Swedish pilot who led daring airstrikes against Nigerian forces using small aircraft. Dubbed the Minikan Air Force, these missions showcased the ingenuity and determination of the Biafran cause, even as they faced overwhelming odds. The cost of conflict, suffering, and survival. The Biafran War revealed both the devastating consequences of conflict and the resilience of the human spirit. Over 3 million lives were lost, with more than 2 million civilians succumbing to starvation and disease. Entire communities were destroyed, leaving the eastern region in ruins. Families were torn apart, and a generation of children grew up amidst unimaginable loss, many without parents, homes, or the promise of a future. The war's cruelty was epitomized by the haunting images of starving children, their emaciated frames and swollen bellies becoming symbols of a humanitarian crisis that shocked the world. Relief efforts by organizations like the Red Cross struggled to reach those in need, and even smuggled supplies fell far short of what was necessary to stem the tide of hunger and disease. Amid this devastation, however, there were stories of profound sacrifice and heroism. Soldiers, many of them young and barely trained, fought with unmatched determination against overwhelming odds. Civilians, often with nothing left to give, shared their last scraps of food to keep neighbors alive. Communities banded together, refusing to let the horrors of war extinguish their spirit. The Nigerian government's blockade of Biafra has been described by some as a form of silent genocide. The deliberate starvation of civilians, particularly children, was seen by critics as an effort to annihilate the Igbo population. While the term remains contentious, the images of skeletal children with swollen bellies and the staggering death toll of over 2 million civilians remain a stark reminder of the war's devastating impact. The suffering was immense, but so too was the determination to survive. The legacy of the Biafran War stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the enduring strength of hope in the face of despair. The role of international powers. The conflict's scale and human tragedy drew the attention of the international community, turning the Biafran War into a proxy battlefield for global powers. The United Kingdom, Nigeria's former colonial ruler, firmly backed the federal government, prioritizing the preservation of Nigeria's unity and its access to valuable oil resources in the eastern region. Similarly, the Soviet Union provided military aid to Gowan's regime, viewing Nigeria as a strategic ally in the Cold War. In contrast, France and a few African nations, including Côte d'Ivoire and Gabon, sympathized with Biafra. France's support for Biafra was partly strategic, aimed at weakening British influence in West Africa. Through unofficial channels, it supplied weapons and humanitarian aid to the embattled republic. Gabon not only served as a critical conduit for resources, but also became a haven for Biafran leader Chukwuemeka Ojukwu during his post-war exile. Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations like the Red Cross worked tirelessly to alleviate suffering in Biafra, but the Nigerian blockade and the dangers of war made their efforts perilous and limited. Supplies often had to be smuggled into the region through clandestine airlifts, but they were insufficient to meet the needs of a starving population. For Biafra, this limited international support provided a glimmer of hope, but could not offset the overwhelming odds. As the war dragged on and resources dwindled, the resilience of the Biafran people was tested to its very limits. The fall of Biafra. By January 1970, the Republic of Biafra could no longer sustain its resistance. Starved of resources, surrounded on all fronts, and with its forces weakened, the embattled nation faced an inevitable collapse. On January 15, 1970, Chukwuemeka Ojukwu fled into exile, entrusting his deputy, Philip Effiong, to formally surrender to the Nigerian government. In his post-war address, Yakubu Gowon declared, "No victor, no vanquished," emphasizing reconciliation and the need to rebuild a fractured nation. While the war had ended, the destruction of the eastern region, the immense human loss, and the trauma of conflict left deep scars on Nigeria's collective psyche. For the Igbo people, a sense of grief and injustice lingered long after the fighting ceased. The legacy of the Biafran War. The Biafran War remains one of the most profound and complex chapters in Nigeria's history. For some, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu is a hero, a leader who stood against oppression and defended the rights of his people. For others, he's a polarizing figure whose decisions led to immense suffering. The conflict laid bare the fragility of unity in a multi-ethnic nation, exposing deep-seated divisions and raising enduring questions about federalism, ethnic relations, and resource control. Even decades later, discussions about Nigeria's political structure, economic disparities, and national identity often trace their roots back to the Biafran War. Maps of a potential sovereign Biafra continue to fuel debates, sparking both nostalgia for what might have been and controversy over the complexities of self-determination. The legacy of the war is not just historical, it remains a living conversation and beyond Nigeria, inspiring modern secessionist movements worldwide. From South Sudan to Catalonia, the struggle for self-determination echoes the story of Biafra. The war also raised critical questions about nationalism, identity, and the cost of independence, questions that remain deeply relevant in today's global landscape. What if Biafra had won? Had Biafra succeeded, the political landscape of West Africa would have been transformed. Nigeria might have fractured into smaller independent states, setting a precedent for other secessionist movements across the continent. With its vast oil wealth, Biafra could have emerged as an economic powerhouse, leveraging its resources to build infrastructure and attract foreign investments. However, the challenges of nation-building, diplomatic isolation, internal divisions, and limited resources would have posed significant obstacles. This alternate history underscores the complexities of nationalism, self-determination, and the delicate balance required to forge unity in diverse societies. History lives on. The Biafran War stands as a testament to the resilience of a people and a stark reminder of the devastating cost of conflict. While the dream of Biafra was never fully realized, it continues to inspire debates about justice, self-determination, and the enduring fight for equality. The lessons of the war extend far beyond Nigeria, offering insights into the challenges of maintaining unity in the face of diversity and division. In the short term, secession in Nigeria is unlikely, primarily due to the federal government's firm opposition and the immense challenges involved. However, the possibility cannot be ruled out entirely. If grievances remain unresolved and tensions continue to escalate, the calls for self-determination could grow louder, posing significant challenges to the nation's unity. Secession is more than just a political act, it is the culmination of years of marginalization, identity struggles, and unaddressed needs. It serves as a stark reminder of the importance of equity, inclusion, and justice in building a nation that works for all its people. To ensure a peaceful and united Nigeria, these underlying issues must be addressed proactively. Only through dialogue, reform, and a genuine commitment to fairness can the dream of a united and prosperous Nigeria truly be realized. Decades after the war, the anthem with Ojukwu leading, "We Are Biafrans" remains a powerful reminder of a people's determination to fight for their identity. For many, it symbolizes the strength, unity, and pride that define the Biafran spirit. The song lives on not just as a historical artifact, but as an emotional connection to the sacrifices made and the dream of self-determination that still lingers. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe to join us as we continue to explore the pivotal chapters of Africa's history and the lessons they hold for our future.